Welcome in. Hail to the podcast brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. Special edition here, live on Friday night, the game eve, or Saturday morning if you're listening back, either way. Just been sitting around all week, letting stuff pile up, and I thought it'd be a really cool thing to get together with my guy, Dennis Fithian, who has been talking about the game all week on Good Afternoon Michigan Football, but just kind of see where we are, where our gut feeling is, and what we're thinking about the night before the game. So quick shout out. I'm Trevor McHugh, senior editor, Maize Blue Review. And let's say hi to Mr. Dennis Fithian. So Dennis, obviously we'll dive into it, but just kind of as the week has gone on and you're sitting here the night before, I don't know, confidence level or nervousness, what kind of words would you describe how you're feeling right now?
Yeah, anxious. It's it's on. The weather reports in Michigan. It's like, okay, you see these all the time, and it was just a day or two ago. It was like, oh, watch out, the weather, and there was nothing. So it was like, okay, and so watch out this weekend. But I'm sitting here about a half hour ago, and I'm looking at the special winter advisories, and it's at 3:00. It's going to really start coming down and really start blanketing Ann Arbor. But if it's saying at 3:00 where the snow could start right around kickoff, some light snow, which is nice for people that are watching it on TV. It always looks good when there's a little snow. It also gives confidence to Michigan when because we all remember 21 and we know that Michigan is the blue collar team in this one. These are the narratives, and I only wish for snow 2 times a year, Christmas Eve and then, Michigan, Ohio State. And here we are. So that's the thing that I'm thinking about a lot. And then just that it's going to pour down and, it's like 8 inches over the, from the time the game's over till, when, Sunday morning or something. So it looks like there's a real snowmageddon, chance here.
Yeah, I think the narrative piece of it is absolutely true. But also just, the cinematic vibe of the 2021 game, I don't think I'll ever get over. Being in that stadium, the snow, it was all part of it. And I love how the weather became an excuse portion of that, because the offense, Ohio State did just fine. They weren't scoring touchdowns, but they put up plenty of yardage, which it's just always kind of been funny. But Derek, nice job. I will say here on the west side of the state, we've had some snow and the storm's already been impacting us. So it will be interesting to see what travels to Ann Arbor. I don't want to think about it too much because, then you start getting into the weeds a little bit with some of the injury talk. Like, obviously, if I'm injured or hurt, I would rather play in warmer weather than cold weather. But we'll see what happens. I think Michigan still is coming into this game with the same mindset, mentality, and game plan that they've had for the last 4 years, and the type of game they want to play and make it ugly and make it physical. We know the stat. I think it's the team that leads in rushing yards back to 2001 has won this game every time. Ryan Day seemed to understand that and want to do that, but then there's been some pushback on that he needs to stop trying to play a certain way to win this game. Do you think we're going to see, regardless of whether maybe the weather is going to matter, but are they going to show up and try and do their air raid thing and not fit the mold of the mission? It feels like they're trying to pretend the game doesn't matter, or they're coming at it from a different angle this year, right? The whole, we're going to fly instead of taking the bus, and, just some of the things they've been saying. It's going to be interesting to see if they're going to play this game the way the game's been played, or if they think they can do the air raid thing and win that way.
Yeah, Day gives me a lot of Cooper vibes. That's, he's 1-4, and, Cooper was pretty famous for, switching things up, Michigan week. He was going to have Stanley, or Joe Germain was his quarterback all year long. And then Michigan week, he's going to put in Stanley Jackson. Jack's going to start, Joe's going to play. Then he mixes it up. So, Days now, we're going to fly and instead of drive. After what he did last year, when, it wasn't the whole thing, but it was part of it, that he wanted to show off that he was tough, and he wanted to show Lou Holtz that he could run the ball, and ran it right at
Where's Lou Holtz?
I'm hoping he makes an appearance, at some point over the next 24 hours and tells Day to shove it, or calls him a crybaby, or does something like that. But running it right at Grant and Graham. However, I know there's a lot of people. No, that was part of it. It was part of it for me. He said and they were trying to run it at him. So who knows what's in his mind when it comes down to it. But I think that whole thing, the cold, his record, they're great. If I've watched another announcer this week say, "Oh, I'm talking to my friends that are Ohio State fans, are Ohio State fans," and I keep asking them. I just saw Booger, saying this on ESPN. His friends are telling him they'd rather beat Michigan than win the national championship. Things are, a little cuckoo. The further south you go in Ohio.
Yeah, I get they don't know how to handle losing in this rivalry, the last four, right? And I think we talked about this a bunch, right? What each game kind of meant, right? And for them, 23, with everything that was going on with the Stallion stuff and him being forced to resign and Harbaugh, whatever, they thought if they won in 23, not only would they win in 23, but that would invalidate everything that happened in 21 and 22. So they really set their hearts on that. And then they lost in 23. And then in 24, they were clearly the better team. Harbaugh's gone, like, we're 20-point favorites. This is going to reset everything. That the 21 through 23 was the cheating years. This will finally end this nonsense. And then they lost again, right? And I think they're kind of in this boat now, too, where you see them, like, they don't know how to answer. They're like, well, I don't care. I'm not nervous. Well, yeah, we won the Natty last year, but yeah, I want to beat them more than win the Natty. Like, they're all over the place. They don't know how to feel in this rivalry. And I've said from the beginning with Day, I'm with you on the Cooper vibes. I don't think he likes the rivalry. I think he hates it. I think especially pre-national championship, his record was incredible. His only Big Ten losses were Michigan. He's this great coach. They're recruiting well, blah, blah, blah. And all anybody wants to talk about is Michigan. And he says team up north, and he does, he goes through the motions, but it just never feels like he really is into it, right? I've grabbed onto this quote from 23 that's never left my mind, which was after the game. He says, yeah, this game means a lot to a lot of people. And the way he said it felt like he was excluding himself from that group, right? Urban Meyer was the dream hire. My kid's showing up to say hi. Urban Meyer was the dream hire for them because he was an excellent coach, but he knew the rivalry, right? He literally was born in it with Toledo. Like, Urban Meyer dedicated all the time and effort to Michigan. It wasn't fake. He got it. Same thing for Michigan with Harbaugh, right? You had a great coach that understood the rivalry. And Sharon Moore, to his credit, feels like he's learned it and truly lives it in his, 6 years before he became the head coach as well. And I think Day just wants to win this game so people stop talking about it. And I thought after last year, winning the national championship was the worst thing for them when it came to this rivalry, because now he's like, see, I told you the game doesn't matter. And I knew coming into this year, it was going to be exactly this. They're still not taking it as serious. It doesn't feel like they're dedicating the time and resources to it or whatever. Like, there was a flip in 21, right? The mentality of Urban Meyer in that era, Michigan didn't have it. And then Aiden Hutchinson and those guys kind of took it back. And it feels like they still have it. And I don't know if it's tangible or not, but it feels like an advantage for Michigan to me going into this game.
Yeah, I don't think Sharon Moore lets all the outside stuff get to him. He seems like he really knows how to handle it. You can throw any question about this rivalry and the intense hatred and everything else. And he's like, it's going to be the kids. It's going to come down to making plays. He's got a smile on his face. And, it's very calming to listen to him talk about it. And I know he gets a lot of that from Harbaugh. And to Harbaugh's credit, he didn't lean into this too much. I know back when he was playing, when he guaranteed they were going to win, that was different. But if you get to Harbaugh, and he talks about it. If he asked him now, he would say, "Look, I'm just trying to look at the Chargers and what's going on." He's not revisiting anything, and he didn't go down memory lane when he was talking about it either. He would just say, "Hey, we're approaching the game and everything." Where Day, I think he jumps in the fishbowl, and I don't remember what year, but it's over the last couple of years where he said, "Yeah, we're getting death threats, and my kids, and it eats at me." And you hear all that, you understand this is big time, and you're going to hear a lot of garbage from across the you don't bring that stuff into it. Don't let I don't think he's up. He shouldn't be a college coach if you're going to start mentioning that stuff and playing out that stuff's all there. You need to push that out. Yeah. So it's not that specifically. But it's how he's flipped around, how he's changed. I remember in 22, the one-armed bandit, Donovan Edwards, and he's ripping off those long runs at the end. But they had Stroud, they had all these great players over there, and there were so many times 4th and 1, close to the 50, and he's punting. And I'm thinking, man, if I was an Ohio State fan, I'd say, what are you doing? Right. We got the best offense. Let's go for it. Let's play. And that played right into Michigan's hands too. So I don't know. I don't know how much self-scouting he's doing and looking at what he does in this game, but he's tightening up. And now with the snow, they're going to look around, and I just don't think he's cut out for this game for Michigan. Not maybe the college game. He won a national championship, but cut out for Michigan, Ohio State. He lets all the outside stuff get to him.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. The Ohio State fan base, especially after the loss last year, was incredulous, right? And they wanted Dave fired and everything, and then he wins the Natty, and it's like, oh, never mind. I guess we didn't care, right? But he made a comment too. I've said for a while I've struggled to hate Ryan Day for some personal reasons. I actually really like the guy. I think what him and his wife have done for mental health and mental illness awareness and things like that has been great. And the way he speaks about it, because he lost his father to suicide at a young age. And he made a comment last year about losing the game. Like the only thing worse, mentioned his dad in the context of the game. And I was like, okay, he's too deep into this now. Like that's something he wouldn't have said in the past. And like, to your point, like it's clear this outside noise is really affecting him with this game. To even put those two in the same conversation, like really caught me off guard with that. So I do think there is that mental edge there and maybe if Ohio State wins, that goes away and that reshapes the rivalry again moving forward. Right. It was kind of the same thing for Michigan in 21. We're going to win. We're going to win. Not believe we can. We're going to win. And it was like, once you got that first one, monkey off your back, whatever it might be. But on the field, there's actual football that needs to be played, right? Coming into the year, I said, I'm going to have a hard time picking Ohio State to win this game because Michigan will be better offensively. Ohio State is replacing so much of their starters from their national championship team. It's at Michigan, not at Ohio State. Whoever's at quarterback, this is even before we knew if Bryce Underwood would be the starter. Whoever's at quarterback is going to be better than what Michigan was getting last year. How in the world will Ohio State win this game? I still kind of have that feeling like I have a hard time picking against Ohio State, but I'm less confident today than I was at the start of the season. And I think a lot of that has to do with I can't believe what a good job Matt Patricia's done. We all made jokes, or it's not all, but I was part of the people making jokes just because it'd been so long since he'd called the defense, especially at the college level. Like, this is crazy. This isn't going to work. And now they're doing kind of what Michigan did before, right? Which is bring NFL type scheme and disguised coverages to the college game. And it's a really, really good defense.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Patricia, that's a little the ace up that Michigan has in the hole here for this game. He hasn't had any adversity. Everybody's patting him on the back, and everybody's, that's funny with the pencil and a laminated sheet and all that. But when push comes to shove, we saw it with the Lions. The players don't want to be in a foxhole with him. The players, they didn't respect him. This was as a head coach with the Lions. And I think that a little mistake, game gets close. I could really see Patricia folding like a cheap suit under the pressure, just like his head coach. I think those two factors, I'm lining a lot of things up. There's a lot of things to like about Ohio State. You look at how they played, and you're looking at the statistics, and all the check marks pretty much go over to Ohio State. Then you start talking about, well, what if they get in a close game? And what about Day in this rivalry? What about Patricia? If you need to stand up and he's got to look at all of his men and I really got to follow him. I'm starting to Michigan, the snow, sands from California. A lot of these things that you look at and you say, oh, hey, look at the numbers. Number 1, pass defense. Number 2, run defense. Well, those are nice things for Ohio State and everything else. But when you start looking at those intangibles of the coach and what happens, is Patricia really elite? It's all Michigan side over there. So
That's actually a really good point. I mean, that plays into another narrative too about like, has Ohio State really been tested at all this year? You know, you see
No.
Julian, yeah, you see Julian saying statistics, and you're like, oh my gosh! But I watch these highlights, and the dude's standing there with no pressure, throwing to a wide open receiver, and a lot of these highlights, like he's not making these crazy plays, and it's just kind of like, wait, how? I haven't watched a ton of Ohio State this year. I just haven't. It's like, wait, how easy have they had it? That the Texas game, analytically, they should have lost. You know, even regular stats, they had less yardage, you know, lost time of possession, blah, blah, blah. And then Texas ends up not being anywhere near that was 1 versus 2 to start the year, right? It definitely didn't end up being that game. So yeah, it's an interesting point. You know, you're in the big house, like you said, the snow, everything comes together, and they get challenged and face some adversity. Does that show the Patricia crack? That, and also too, like, I haven't felt better about Michigan's offense all year than I do right now after the last 2 games. Underwood obviously had his interceptions against Northwestern that were critical and bad, and missed the one against Maryland. Luckily, they dropped it, but that was another one where it's like, ugh. But again, he wasn't rattled. He's looked comfortable. They've thrown in these RPO slants, which I have been screaming for a decade, it feels like. So it's been nice to see. And what I can't get over, diving into the numbers this week, this offense is shockingly similar to what 22 and 23 were in terms of efficiency. Yards per play, either better than or right in line. Yards per game, better than or right in line. Yards per possession, better than or right in line. The difference is they're averaging about a touchdown less per game in terms of scoring. And that's partly red zone efficiency. I think it's probably special teams a lot too, right? Whether it's losing the field position battle on punts or not high quality returns. Maybe defensively, they're giving up more yards. I'm not sure, but this just feels like offensively, if they can get in the red zone and score touchdowns instead of field goals, and Zavada doesn't miss any field goals, again, to your point, maybe they haven't done it this year, but like I start feeling like with everything tilting Michigan's way, maybe they will in this game, and it's another reason I'm confident for Michigan.
There usually comes a time in championship seasons, in whatever sport you're watching, that there's going to be. It was Steve Eiserman when he was with the Red Wings. He said it, and this is when they were going all the cups, winning Stanley Cups. He said, you know, there's always comes a point where, you know, he was talking about playoff series where it looks like, you know, it comes down to, it's a dire situation. I can remember the one year they were they down 0-2 to the Canucks, and it was Lidstrom. We scored a goal from center ice, and you know that was kind of the backbreaker, and they were able to flip it and everything like that. But the Pistons were, it was always that was kind of their mantra. If it isn't rough, it isn't right. And then I even think about Michigan in the 23 season. You could say the adversity was against Bowling Green, and I think that was for JJ, but they didn't really play anybody until that Penn State game. And the Penn State game was tight in the second half. Not like Michigan just blew their doors off. You know, they needed to grind, and that was the one. And you saw how emotional Sharon was at the end. Ohio State, they played the last day of August. That was their best game. That was their biggest test, and that was a nice win. And their defense surprised, you know, I think surprised everybody how well they played. They looked pretty good. You know, you talked about the numbers there, but since then, been pretty much easy street for them. Maybe the first half against Washington, that was kind of close. I mean, I watched that. They got a touchdown, so they did have the lead, but they have not been in that situation that you normally are in a course of a season where it's like, okay, now we're going to find out. And because of their track record, their recent track record that plays into the mental edge, that goes to the coaches, it goes to all of them, the Michigan Stadium, and you know, Michigan's going to be rollicking all their fans, just going to love it and go after them. So I think that part, we don't know about OSU and how they're going to be able to handle that, because they have not handled that really well, especially these last couple of years.
And I'm kind of bouncing back and forth now, but like thinking about their offense again and what they're going to try and do, they've been much slower this year, right? Again, I feel like trying to duplicate what Michigan has done in a lot of ways, right? They've been running less plays and kind of giving their defense a break, and the formula has been similar. I've seen people, hello from France. Hello. That's awesome. Wish I was in France right now. France around the holidays would be a blast. um, no, but
Bonjour. Sorry.
It's all good. I've seen people talk about, obviously, a topic of conversation for me, at least in my content, has been the substitution patterns and the heavy rotation we've seen where not one or two guys, but entire units in the secondary, the entire front is being subbed out, and whether Ohio State would take those moments as an opportunity to go up tempo, or if Michigan will maybe adapt the way they sub in this game, if we're going to see more heavy starters. That's going to be an interesting part of the game for me too, just in terms of strategy. And then of course the chess match, how either side responds.
That is exciting to think about how different, they work on all these different plays, and then you get people like yourself, you'll be over there, and I won't be surprised that, watch the first or second series. You're like, we haven't seen that formation all year long. And I'll be like, how do you know that? What do you mean? We haven't seen that play, and, they'll be throwing stuff like that. And I mean, I can tell when there's a trick play or something. Yeah, you haven't seen that, but I'm talking about just but I don't know. I don't know if it's coming down to that. I think Michigan, at times, you're going to see, we've seen it even these last couple of weeks, an additional offensive lineman. I don't think there's a big secret for Michigan. They're coming true. They're going to try to punch Ohio State in the face. They're going to control the ball. I think you're going to see a little bit more of Underwood with his legs more than his arm. They might be more important, with the wind and maybe a little bit of snow, and just how they play and how good he is at it. I mean, that's a pretty good part too. So, he's my wild card, and those legs of his, and just how good he is at running the ball. To me, that could, flip this into Michigan's favor. I know there's a lot of, let's say this about Underwood, he threw the ball. He looked great against Northwestern, but then you say, well, yeah, but the 2 interceptions and the fumble weren't so great. Of course. And, so you don't just say, well, he's not going to, if he doesn't turn it over, he might turn it over, but I want to see that if he can throw it like he was against Northwestern. And of course, the big thing is it's how you finish. And he finished, as you pointed out, on that last drive, and that nice story that I read. I liked it. The strike to Marsh over there on the sideline, great catch, better throw. When it really came down to it, that's got to be a nice confidence booster for Underwood. In this particular game, where this season, it really hasn't gone where he's been this like prodigy where you just be like, oh my God, he's turned the college football world on its head. I've seen everybody commenting on him saying, oh, he's got the skill and he's got this and he's got that. But he wins this game, all that stuff feels like it's back on the table for him. Oh yeah, he said it's over for Ohio State. Oh yeah, okay, this was the one where he needs to really come up big. And so just him, I mean, we could probably spend an hour just talking about Underwood and what he's going to bring tomorrow. But and I'd love to see just what his demeanor is. Is he just sitting back, with his feet up, just chilling, doing the same thing, watch a tape like he always does, or is he like, woo, man? I don't know. I just love to see it.
Yeah, because you've seen him at these road games feeding off of the environment, right? We've talked about that already. He's a guy that's not scared of the stage. He seems like somebody that thrives in it. I haven't been as, I don't know if upset's the right word, Dennis, but like relative to my expectations, there's been less passing touchdowns this year. But if we started getting into that in terms of Underwood's development, I'm going to talk more about tight end usage and some things that have happened at wide receiver than I probably am Underwood, right? Coming into this year, and why I thought he was going to start from the get-go, said was, look, he has all the talent in the world. He's one of the most talented recruits I've ever seen. I don't know what his decision-making is going to look like and how quickly he's going to learn from mistakes. And that's why I said you start him, because what he has to get better at is only going to happen from playing football, right? And he has to avoid what I called the critical mistakes that cost you a game. The one against Northwestern could have, but to your point, he led the drive and they won, right? I think about Cade McNamara's interception. A lot of people forget about that now, but that was early in the Ohio State game in 21 when they had a chance to go up 2 scores, and it felt like Michigan had all the momentum, and they gave it right back to Ohio State. I remember looking at my buddy, and I'm like, well, that was fun for 15 minutes or whatever it was, right? Like that felt like one of those turning moments. I think I'm with you on the legs. If they've held him back in any way, you can't in this game, whether that's by calling designed runs or making sure he knows he has the freedom in reads to run it. You could argue that interception against Northwestern. I don't know if we ever heard from him directly, but it felt like that was just him deciding before the snap he was going to throw the football, right? Michigan had been running the ball, and maybe he was bored and it was his turn to throw it again. But this could be, for a freshman already, kind of this legacy defining moment. We've seen it with Donovan Edwards in 22. We saw it with Haskins, where I always screw up the reverse. Here we go. Hassan Haskins, 21. Let's talk about a few of those guys. I think that'll be fun. Underwood obviously has a moment very early to begin his legacy definition. Jordan Marshall, we know, is going to play in this game. Mr. Football from Ohio, could have gone to Ohio State. How good he's looked when he came in to fill in for Justice Haynes. You've already talked about it, the weather and the game Michigan wants to play. I have a hard time picturing a Michigan victory that doesn't include Jordan Marshall having the game of his life.
I agree with you on that. And the thing about Marshall is this is setting up. We don't want to get, even though I'm talking about Underwood using his legs, it's what Derek says here. What has happened since 21? You're going through Haskins, and then you had the one-armed bandit, and then you just keep going through. In 23, the best out of all of them, they needed everything, and the plays down at the end, it was there. But you had Corum, you had the superstar there, Corum, after Zinter goes down, score that touchdown, and then last year Michigan's defense, they held Ohio State to 77 rushing yards, and they ran the ball for 172 yards. And Khalil Mullings, the biggest play of the game was it a 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, whatever it was. And he was able to, rip off whatever that was, 15, 20 yards. So Marshall, being from Ohio, knowing this game and the weather, I mean, let's look at it right. They might be sitting in Schembechler Hall saying, we're going with Marshall and we're going to pound the rock at these guys. And everyone's talking about everything else. And sometimes it's the obvious thing that's sitting right in front of us.
Yeah. That's so true, because we could talk about Underwood, like you said, for like an hour, but really, I would be shocked if the team that rushes for more yards doesn't win the game again. There's a reason that if it happens a few years in a row, fine, 20 years in a row or whatever, like there's a reason, right? And I was impressed with Kuzdal, and the little bit we've seen him, he runs hard. So if they got to lean on him a little bit, okay. Micah Kapana comes back. He hasn't played since New Mexico. He's a fast player. If they can give him a couple carries where he gets outside and that helps you win the football game, cool. I don't know. They probably are scared to call an end around with Marsh again after what happened against Northwestern. I don't want to get into that and why I didn't like that call, but whatever. How creative, again, they're going to get with those guys. But yeah, it just feels like Jordan Marshall, 25 carries and whatever yards and touchdowns it takes to win the game is going to be what it is.
Now, putting Kuzdal in seems creative to me. I think, Marshall.
Yeah.
Whatever. It would be creative if they're, they're putting somebody else in, because it feels like, Marshall, you're going to have to drag him off the field in any spot. So that's
have you made a Kuz comp yet? Does he remind you of anybody?
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of Marshall. And that's what I thought at the spring game when I was watching the Maize Blue scrimmage, this past year, so I'm sitting there and Marshall looked pretty good in the game. He wears number 23, and then Kuzdal was on the same team. And I saw him make this move to the outside where he had this kind of jump cut. I was like, yeah, Marshall looks good. And they're like, Kuzdal, the ball. I'm like, what? Wait. So he does kind of look like Marshall to me.
And he does what you want a Michigan back to do. His legs don't quit. He gets you those extra yard or two. He's not going to get tackled behind the line of scrimmage. I've seen Ty Isaac in here too from Steve. That's not a bad one either. I just, if the guy's getting 5 whatever carries and he can get you that 4 or 5 average and fall forward and get you those couple extra yards, I'd be happy with it. We've mentioned him a couple times at wide receiver, Andrew Marsh, who when I talked at the beginning of the year in terms of players and what I thought their ascension and development would look like, I think Marsh might be the only one that's like drastically exceeded my expectation. Like I knew how he was going to come along. I told everybody coming out of that bye week that was going to be his huge opportunity. I thought towards the end of the year he'd be right here with McCauley in terms of top targets, but like the tight ends would still be a huge factor. So maybe he's the third or fourth guy. He is the clear cut wide receiver one going into this game. You look at his stats relative to when he starting and amongst the rest of the Big Ten, he's one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. And his rise, I think, has allowed McCauley to do more of the things he's good at on the shorter and intermediate routes, some of the slants and posts, etc. But obviously, Samaj Morgan's kind of again put to the side with his drop issues. We've seen more Channing Goodwin as of late, which I've joked he's a fantastic receiver, great route runner, great blocker. He just struggles with catching the ball, which is important for a receiver. But like, it feels like some McCauley, but Andrew Marsh is probably going to have another big game, or at least pull off a couple big plays when he's targeted, depending on, we said the run game is going to be crucial in this one, but like Marsh is probably going to have to make a play or two.
Yeah, for me, if it's just coming on the wide receivers, I want to see 80% Marsh and 20% McCauley. If we're going across the board as pass catchers, I'd say, yeah, Marsh, McCauley, but then I want to see Klein. I want to see Marshall, who seems like he's always open. He looks like he's a pretty good route runner. Tonelli has come up here and there. So those three tight ends after the two wide receivers, when the pass game is developing tomorrow, I'm not going to get too fancy, going down the list or any other kind of surprises. Go to the best players, the guys that have been the best. Those three tight ends and a heavy dose of Marsh, and obviously the Underwood's the one who's got to have the feel for that, and he's got that going. They feel they've got that. That hookup that they've had now for a few games. So they're feeling it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to think, obviously, in this new world with transfer portal and whatever else, but theoretically, we should be seeing 2 more years of Underwood and Marsh together. And that's an exciting prospect. I love the Marshall shout out. A couple people have mentioned, yeah, he has been. I don't know what the deal is. Again, I could do a whole episode on the tight end usage, but Zach Marshall has been more effective when they target him. Like you say, seems to be a good route runner. He gets open. He seems to do well after the catch as well. Loyal hail to the podcast viewers know he's my favorite football neck on the team. He's got that monstrous wide neck, so I'm a big fan of that. But if Marshall's making plays peppered in, I'm with you. You don't need to get fancy. Just go to your top player. And Andrew Marsh. Defensively, who are the X factors? I mean, Derek Moore seems obvious, because he's been the consistent pressure from the pass rush where Michigan maybe, hasn't had that full foursome that we're used to seeing from them. Jayshon Barham can create pass rush, but creates a liability in the run game at times. Cam Brandt and TJ Guy haven't been at that top second level like we've seen from previous units in the past. Obviously, interior, as good as Rayshawn Benny has been. Well, Benny can create some pass rush for you, but as good as Benny has been, and Enoetta has risen in the last few weeks as well. I think Trey Williams and Payne and Pierce, like all these guys have done their job, but I don't know other than Moore if there's that like game changer. I'm thinking of the sacks that Hutch had obviously in 21. I'm forgetting now who had in 22. Was it Okie had the last one? Anyway, is there another X factor up front for you other than Derek Moore? Does it kind of start and end with him?
Well, up front, I would say that Moore is the guy. How about TJ Guy? They're running some different. That they're going to commit extra players to Derek Moore. So then you go to the other side. Can you get somebody else to come over there? And is this one of those? If we're going on the freshman thing, maybe Nate Marshall pops up and gets there.
That'd be cool.
There's my little wild card. Give me Nate Marshall.
There is always kind of like some random guy, isn't there, that we don't consider. I don't know if that'll be in the front. The linebackers, we kind of know what they are. Well, we don't.
I'm intrigued about the linebackers because Sullivan, usually you come
Yeah.
back from an injury and, he jumped off sides against Northwestern and, or was that the last game? He jumped off sides
Yeah.
against. Yeah. And so now he's back and we know he's a playmaker, and Houseman, the green dot on the helmet, he's back. Is he starting? Where is he at? You take a week off and you get it if it's for injury, but this is a different circumstance. We've all followed the situation. So, he's a question mark. So then you got all the other guys that fit in there. I'd put Sullivan because of his playmaking ability.
I like that.
To me, if I'm throwing wild cards out and I'm going Marshall, Zach Marshall, and then I'm going Nate Marshall, and now I'm throwing out another wild card, it's Cole Sullivan.
I actually like that a lot too, because if I'm thinking about what Wink likes to do, which is not necessarily blitz. Again, I don't want to get into the weeds on this because sometimes okay. Statistically, sending 4 is what you would think of as a blitz or not blitz. But if you're replacing one of those pass rushers with a typical non-pass rusher or linebacker, it gets called a blitz. So a lot of the reason Wink's blitz rate shows up super high is because he's sending linebackers, safeties in place of a Derek Moore, whoever that's dropping back into coverage. And that's where that whole debate comes in. But Sullivan's a guy you can send after the quarterback. And in the first few games before he got hurt, he was analytically one of the top pass rushers. He was leading at interceptions at one point because he had the 2, I believe. If he's fully healthy, and then Jimmy Rolder has been so good this year. I'll be honest with you, Dennis. I am going into this game not expecting anything from Houseman, potentially. I mean, not even playing.
Okay.
To be honest, again, I don't want to get into that. One's a totally different situation. I don't know what his mindset is. I don't know where Michigan is at that, but I think Sullivan and Rolder and a Troy Bowles, who has looked really, really good in his action as well. I'm fine with that group.
Be honest about Wink. If you had Wink on the line here and said, Wink, how many times you're going to go cover 0 and, bring the house and the fans, because you see the fans, and especially game day and the game thread, they're always like, they don't like, it seems like they don't like blitzing at all, but if they know that there's a cover 0, they would be completely, they would say, Wink, no, if there's no cover 0, will he abide by what the fans want?
I think that's probably my biggest fear is if they're not able to create pressure with 4, he's going to panic and start blitzing. Right. I don't hate blitzing. I hate blitzing when I feel like you don't need to. So situationally, we see on the 3rd and mediums, the 3rd and longs, like I get it. The quarterback needs more time on a longer throw. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get to the quarterback and force a bad throw, but you're still not getting there. And now you've also taken your best pass rusher into coverage. Derek Moore's dropped back into coverage because you're trying to fool the quarterback. You just get too cute with it. They brought it up in the comments. Give me twists and stunts. That's enough for me. Running some stunts. I don't need my top rushers dropping into coverage and blitzing TJ Metcalf to catch the quarterback off guard and potentially leaving a Jeremiah Smith wide open, right? Because all teams are doing, it's Madden 101. And you can do this in beginner mode. Wherever the blitz is coming, you throw it to where the blitz came from. There's probably somebody open over there. That's all they're doing.
Good idea.
Right? It's just the situational piece of it. Wink has forgotten more football than I will ever know. And I think when it comes to the criticism of the things he does too, we have the benefit of hindsight and judging the results of the play. And I can tell you I've sat in film reviews of high schools and colleges, and 95% of the time and a broken down play, a player did something wrong. A player lined up in the wrong spot, or a player didn't grab the guy they were supposed to, or didn't hear the call correctly. And you could say, look, that all trickles up to the coach, right? But you'd be surprised. I think it's really easy to be like, oh my gosh, nobody covered that guy. What was that call, Wink? For all you know, a DB blitzed and wasn't supposed to. Or, you know what I mean? There's just other variables to that. But look, he showed up last year in the biggest games. I don't think the defense has been an issue at all in the last few. For some reason, it's the bookends. That first drive, Michigan seems to let the other opponent offense do whatever they want. And then that last drive at the end of the game, they seem to get some points that you wish they didn't. But everything in between, it's hard to complain about the job Wink's been doing. I want you to respond, and if you don't mind, do the shameless plug for us too, please.
Well, let me read this question. I'll have you answer it, and then I will tell you about this, Blue Friday. Oh, Black Friday deal that we have coming up. Your average fan wants to know, this one seems pretty obvious to me. If you probably can get odds on this, I would bet the former quarterback. But what non-quarterback is throwing a pass tomorrow? There's always one. You answer that.
Can we get Donovan Edwards back? Right? What was he, 4 for 4 with 3 touchdowns or something like that? Yeah, Donovan McCulley seems like the obvious answer.
Yes.
Was that Nebraska? He threw one, right?
I'm thinking,
it went out of bounds or something happened. Anyway,
but Washington, I was going to say, but it could be Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm cloudy tonight, I guess. Look, it's got to be him or Kendrick Bell. If it's Kendrick Bell, it's too obvious. Samaj was the one that threw it to him. Oh, that's right, because we were like, yes, that's right, because we were like, he threw it to McCulley. Is that what it was? Your average fan? I think that's what it was. And McCulley had to like turn back around. Yeah, because I remember thinking we're like, you have 2 former quarterbacks at wide receiver and you let Samaj be the one to throw the ball. Yeah, McCulley seems like the obvious one if it's going to be anyone. I don't know if that's going to happen, though. You talked about, like, Michigan's had trick plays. The flea flicker was the thing forever during that 21-23 run. It seemed like they had one almost every single game. I don't know what a trick play is going to look like in this game. I really think the tendency breakers are going to be the bigger deal, right? It's when they think Bryce isn't going to keep it, him actually keeping it, right? When the receivers have been doing digs on these option routes, actually sending them deep and getting a fly route out of it. The tight ends that have been setting in the flat, get me Marlon Klein in a seam route, right? These kind of things, if you go and watch what Chip Lindsey is in his element, when he's in his bag, when he's at his best, he can run 3 or 4 formations out of the same personnel. He can go 4 wide, 5 wide jumbo with 2 tight ends. He doesn't care. He'll move guys all over the field. And he can just get super, super creative with RPO where he can run the same play over and over again with 4 or 5 different results. I think that's the creative element for Michigan. I don't know if there's going to be a trick play, but if there is, it's got to be McCulley throwing it. And if it's anybody else, I'd probably be pissed.
McCulley did attempt to pass against Washington.
It was Washington. Okay.
And you think about 2022, I would have advised the Michigan staff. It worked, so everybody loves it. It goes down in history as one of the great trick plays ever. But
the Mullings, that's right.
Khalil Mullings was a linebacker and switched to running back, and the play was for Blake Corum, but they go with Mullings to throw pretty much a blind pass, a jump pass on a 4th down in the 4th quarter. I would say, the element of surprise. Okay, yeah. I got you there, but
he said after the fact he didn't even know where. I don't remember who. If it was it Schoon?
A tight end. It was a tight end. Yeah.
Yeah. He even said flat out he just figured he was out there somewhere. He didn't even see him when he threw it.
But you look at the replay. He's going like this, and he's got it way back here, and he's kind of just throwing it up. Wild to think that they were like, yeah, that's the one we're going to go with. You know, it's not wild. Is this particular deal. Now you can say, wow, it's wild, half off. For you folks that are thinking about taking your Michigan fandom to the next level, you're saying, I am the biggest Michigan fan out there. Not if you don't belong to the Maize Blue Review, because all day and all night, what Trevor and I are talking about right here, this is what we're doing over on the Maize Blue Review. And then you've got football covered, recruiting. Basketball seems to be doing pretty good. I've noticed that people are kind of interested in that. And on the women's side, hockey. I mean, it's there for you. And I'm going to guarantee you this. You will love it, and you will have a great time, and it'll be the best money you've ever spent. And today, you've got a great deal, 50% off. It's the Ultimate Fan Bundle. So go to on3.com, push that button, and go ahead. You get half off. That's not too shabby. Black Friday deal, Maize and Blue Review, plus On3, Rivals, you get it all half off. So go check that out and just double click and you get instant access. You could be in tonight talking about the weather, the trick plays, making your own threads. You can do it all. And like I just said today, Trevor, people that are like, I don't know about message boards, people that are mean and everything. You and Josh have done a nice job of being able to set the tone where it's friendly banter. You get in there, it's not people you like calling you the worst person ever, jumping a lake, like sometimes you can see on Twitter or I guess other message boards down through the years. You get some of that. These guys do a good job where it's a friendly environment. So we'll see you over there, Maize Blue Review, and go take advantage of that deal. I don't know why you wouldn't if you're a Michigan fan, to be honest.
So good. Yeah, I love our message board community. Obviously in the Den, I'm a part of multiple message board communities, and that hostility is out there. I appreciate all the credit. Honestly, a lot of it is just our community and the folks that are in there. I don't want to be a heavy moderator, so I avoid doing that, but it's just kind of culture over there. And look, if you're not a big message board guy, even without that, like I said, the Rivals piece of it and the On3 piece of it, with everything On3 has done in terms of hiring folks and building up the national content coverage you get, that alone is worth the money. And you can peek at other sites. You can't post, but you get read-only access to other sites. So like I've been keeping up on all these coaching searches by going to all these other team sites. That's been kind of fun to watch the Lane Kiffin drama play out as well. But yes, so thank you guys. If obviously we always have a promo throughout the year. It's $1 for the first week, but $60 for your entire first year. We do not run a lot of great promos like this. So if you've been on the fence about signing up, we'd really appreciate you joining us over there. Okay. Let's get into the big picture stuff. Let's talk predictions. Michigan wins if, Michigan loses, whatever. I will be honest, I didn't read our score prediction staff article out, so I don't know what you wrote yet. We obviously post our staff predictions every Friday, but whatever you wrote this morning and the building off it as we sit here tonight, we've talked about these X factors on offense. They're all young, freshmen or redshirt freshmen. We've talked about a defense that I think is what it is, but will Wink be the Wink we saw last year? Is he going to do something that upset fans? And obviously the special teams, will Zavada miss or will he make when he's called on? Will the Andrew Marsh switch at return and make a big difference? Whatever. And then weather and Ryan Day's head and what is or isn't in there, all of those factors. Put it all together tomorrow afternoon when you go live with Post Game Live. What type of Michigan-Ohio State game are you talking about?
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be a win for Michigan, and I have only picked – I used to feel like I had a great read on this game and was giving people the advice that they needed in terms of who was going to come out on top. But my record speaks for itself. I haven't been very good. I did pick Michigan in 2023. I feel like everybody was picking Michigan in 2023, so I don't know how much credit I'm going to get, but I didn't pick them in 21. I didn't pick them in 22. And I didn't pick them last year. And that's one of the biggest reasons that I can recall being on after last year and saying, I'm never going to doubt Michigan again. Not in this game, not after beating Ohio State on the road. Are you kidding me? However, I just I have looked at where Michigan has been since the Washington game, and I just don't feel it from the offense. Even last week against Maryland, some of those plays that Maryland, they had a receiver that had at least 2 steps on Jair Hill. And I think Ohio State's going to make a play like that. They had a wide receiver in the end zone that just couldn't connect with it. And I know there's, that's part of the game and everything else, but that seems like the kind of play that Ohio State is going to make. So I'm that's the part. If I could have seen Michigan elevate their offense even more or more, and I could have been impressed, with them with Michigan State. The Purdue game didn't do it for me. And so that's where, in the end, I was unlike all of the other writers for the Maize Blue Review who picked Michigan. Nice job, you guys. It's a lot more fun picking Michigan, but I went on the other side with this one, and, I'll have to wear that, and I will after the game. If if it ends up being Maize and Blue. So that's how I went with it. What about you?
You know the saying, if you played the game 10 times, team A would win however many times, right? And if you're in that underdog side, you just want to be one of those type of games where you're the winner, right? In 2024, I think you could make the argument, if you played that game 10 times, Ohio State wins 9 out of 10 times.
Woo!
Right? Like Michigan shouldn't have won that football game. And Ohio State fans are going to say Ohio State lost it and it was just Ryan Day and that'll never happen again. And I don't want to break down the what did or did not happen in 24, but like that was just one that you stole. And again, coming into this year, I've just been so hung up on what changes positively or negatively for both teams to close in this gap. And if Ohio State can't win at home with their national championship team against Davis Warren, I'm not trying to take a shot at Davis Warren. I love Davis Warren, but his stat line was what it was in that game, right? That Jack Sawyer interception, that was one of those moments where I'm like, all right, that's not going to be it, right? What has changed that I think Ohio State overcomes? And the mentality piece for me, we talked about it. I know it's maybe not tangible and it's narrative, and we're reading into things Ryan Day says or doesn't say, or the way he looks, or whether they fly or ride the bus. I just feel like they still don't get it. They still don't get it. And that might not matter because Michigan might make the mistakes. I'm with you. The offense not being scoring enough in the red zone, the mistakes that didn't become huge, the dropped interception and some plays on defense. Like there's reasons I'm like, man, Ohio State could expose this. I think Ohio State wins this game this year 6 out of 10 times. And I think with the weather and the potential injuries, I don't know what's going on with Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate. I don't know. With saying not being tested, with Ohio State's offensive line being questionable, Michigan's getting better as the year has gone on, a healthy Jordan Marshall, like all these little things. I think it's one of the four. Michigan will be close in the fourth quarter, and that's all it takes. Even the blowout wins in 21 and 22, they just have to keep it ugly enough and close enough in the fourth quarter, and Ryan Day is going to hear all the voices. And it's going to be spinning, and it's going to be, oh no, not again. Here we go again. And maybe he'll convince himself, actually, do we even want to win this game? I get a week off. Don't have to go to the Big Ten championship game. They're probably a top 4 team no matter what. I get to rest my players. Maybe losing wouldn't be so bad. Right? And that'll be the angle we take. I don't know. I got 24-20. I think Michigan wins again. I would not be shocked if Ohio State wins. If I was betting, I would probably have to bet on Ohio State, right? Just because that's what all the paper says. But Josh Pate, on threes, Josh Pate said it. Until Ohio State gives me a reason to pick him in this game, I'm not going to do it. I got Michigan.
I like the angle that Michigan is playing for their college football life. At Ohio State, they know. They didn't
if
know.
If this was the NFL, they would probably rest their starters.
They knew they were in last year. They knew they were in last year, and I guess they didn't know they were in was it 2022, where they backdoored in there, and they should have won the national championship that year. They should have won it that year. So that maybe that does play into. They got all the fans saying we want this one more than the playoffs now, and or the more than the national championship. So if they don't know what they're doing when it comes down to that intangible side, but I like that angle. Michigan needs it. Ohio State, their fans will tell you that they do need it, but they actually don't. So there you go.
They don't want to be fully invested in it because if they do lose, they don't want that pain and hurt again. They don't want to deal with that again. And they now know they can lose it and still win a national championship. But if they win the game, you'll see how much Ohio State fans care about this game if they win it.
Oh, yeah.
But they're setting themselves up for the out if they lose it, which I understand. We did it for 20 years, right? So we got 5 minutes before an hour. I know that was going to be our cutoff, but I did want to, on that note with the playoff. Michigan's 15th. And they're, if you believe the ESPN predictor, which they have a formula. You click, if they win this game, whatever, what are the odds of getting in? They don't think Michigan's a lock. I don't even think they get above 50% if they beat Ohio State to make the playoff. Without getting into the weeds of who's above and who would need to lose and who helps, a 10-2 Michigan that beats Ohio State, who's been number one all year since week 2, not getting into the playoff seems insane to me, first off, right? And second off, I'm calling Texas and Oklahoma and canceling. And I'm calling Notre Dame and I'm canceling because I am never playing a tough out-of-conference game ever again. They could have played Akron and be 10-1 right now. And maybe they're in the playoff whether they beat Ohio State or not. Like, I just, as the playoff expansion has happened, as the conference expansion has happened, like, they have to do things that prevent this sport from getting worse and punishing a team like Michigan for playing. Them and Notre Dame are the only teams in the top 15 that have not played an FCS school. They have played 10. They will have played 10 of 12 Power 4 teams, and New Mexico is going to win their conference in the other one. So I know strength of schedule might say Michigan's not as tough as other schedules, but like Ole Miss has only played 8 Power 4 teams. They're conference games. That's it. And that formula is interesting. So does Michigan get in if they beat Ohio State? And if they don't, what does that mean for this playoff format?
Yeah, well, the part I feel like crossing that bridge if it when it
for sure
it happens, then I'll be ready to grab the pitchforks and storm the Big Ten offices or the college football offices or start sending nasty tweets, Heather Dinich. I'll do all those kind of things. I think that they'll be in, and they'll be in, one, because they're Michigan, and I mean they're an exciting team, and the history of they're a blue blood, and they got Bryce Underwood, and they bring eyeballs. That matters a lot, even though they don't say that. That's a big, and I thought they positioned them and bumped them up a little bit, just enough to give them an out so they can do that. So I think they will be in, despite any kind of computer simulations or running and everything else. But the other part is that they will have the best win out of any of those teams that they can look at, and they can hold that up there. That should matter. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. They're a little bit like the Committee on Infractions. You don't exactly know what they're going to do, so you got to wait on that. But if they get the best win out of anyone, and that they did play, they lined up a tough team like that, and they're Michigan, I think all of those things will matter, and I think that they will be in. So I'm not going to sweat it. I'll be watching, and I'll be ready with some Heather Dinich tweets and everything. But I'm thinking they're going to be in.
Yeah, they should be. For what you just said, I mean, the biggest win of the year has to matter. It has to, and at the end of the year too. But yeah, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Texas Tech will all have 9 Power 4 games. Ole Miss 8, Oklahoma 9. Vanderbilt right in front of Michigan also with only 9, and all of those schools played FCS games this year, which Michigan did not. So, all right, Dennis, this was fun. Thank you for coming on. Like I said, we didn't have a chance to do a pod this week. Josh and I would, and also my friend Nick, he's sick. So I wanted to make sure I'm sitting here with all these thoughts in my head. Wanted to make sure we had a conversation about Ohio State with just one more evening until the game. Again, tomorrow, guys, we'll have full coverage, maizenbluereview.com. If you're not a subscriber already, now's the time to join. You can get 50% off. Head over to Maize Blue Review. You'll have access to pregame intel. Recruiting stuff is obviously getting ready to close up. Basketball, like Dennis mentioned, the best team in the country, if you ask me. Number 1. Women's look good. Hockey. Tough time to be a Ward Manual hater, isn't it? With how good the Michigan Athletics are doing. I had to throw that in there. Screw it. But anyway, yeah, and then Dennis, of course, will be live tomorrow, right? I'm assuming, following the game. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get it up there. That's
right. You're both gonna be there, aren't you?
We will be on the field.
Yeah.
See what the snow. It makes for a good, but pretty quickly after. We'll shoot something. Obviously, that'll be live. As my one friend Mark used to say, this is tape before a live studio audience. That's what it's going to be like down at the stadium tomorrow. But then it'll be turned around pretty quick, and you won't know the difference. So yeah, it'll be up there.
make sure you're liking, subscribing, and doing notification bell on the YouTube channel so you know when that video does go live, posted, whatever, with Dennis and Brock from In the Big House when the game ends. All right. Speaking for Dennis, thank you all for joining us. And yeah, hopefully we're celebrating a Michigan victory tomorrow, and we're not upset about them getting left out of the playoff in a couple weeks. We'll see how those conversations go. But thank you guys. Had a great one. We'll talk to you soon.